Welcome to the Art of Plenty. Here's the big question of the day. Am I a liar? Am I a person who lies? What do I think about myself when I think about my lying behavior? We're going to get into that and unpack that, because if you know me at all, or if you've been listening along, which I'm hoping that this isn't your first episode, but if it is your first episode, I am a person who values authenticity. So what does a person who really values authenticity think about lying? And do I consider myself a liar? Let me preface this by telling you that I was reading a book a couple months ago, maybe a couple weeks ago, and there was this one sentence in the book that really stood out to me. And it said that people lie on average, I think the number was 1.6 times a day. So between 1 and 2 lies a day, the average person tells. And when I read that, I thought, really? Is this true? And I've done a little bit of Googling since I read that, and that tends to be what is the accepted number that people typically lie in a day, between 1 and 2 times. And I thought, well, I consider myself an incredibly honest person. I'm very open and authentic and transparent. So I'm like, okay, do I fit this norm? Am I also a person who lies between 1 and 2 times a day? I'm going to keep track. I'm going to notice and draw my attention to myself to see if this is something that I, in fact, do. Okay, guess what? Yes, I totally do. In the course of a week, I counted 5 lies. That feels like a lot. Now, we're going to dive into this a little bit later in the episode, and I've got my notes. So if you're watching on YouTube today, yes, I have paper in front of me because I've got some important parts that I don't want to forget and I don't want to get distracted from. But 5 times, that feels like a lot of lies. But these are not what I would say, well, they're probably classified as like white lies, which I think there is some difference in how people perceive honesty and what types of lying is acceptable and unacceptable. But we will dive into that. Now, I did not even realize that I'm just an average person. I did not realize, because I value integrity so much, I did not realize that I am like the average person who does, in fact, lie on a regular basis. I kind of thought that I outgrew that. Let me take this back. I used to be an incredible liar, meaning I lied all the time. I don't know that I would call it pathological, but I don't even know if I would necessarily call it compulsive. But when I was a teenager, I lied about everything. I lied about who I was with, where I was going, and what I was doing. I grew up in a home where I had very strict parents. Now, I don't know if I had the strictest of parents. I probably didn't. But I had parents that were fairly involved and didn't want me doing certain things. And my mom always jokes about how she thought that I was going to be fine when I got to junior high and high school because I had always been a leader. So she thought, oh, Amy's not going to get into trouble because she's a leader. Well, that did nothing for me. It had no bearing whatsoever on the behaviors that I chose through my adolescence. And I think because it wasn't so much about peer pressure or that I was just following along. I was kind of leading the way along. I was very outgoing and thought, yeah, we should totally do that. We should definitely try that. I was extremely social and I love to be out and doing things and experiencing things. And consequently, I didn't want to get in trouble because I didn't want to stop doing said things. So I had to lie all the time to my parents, which infuriated my father because my dad actually couldn't understand it. He considers himself a very honest person who never really lied as a kid or a teenager. So he didn't really comprehend how come someone would lie. And I would love to get him to do my little experiment of counting your lies for a week. I'd be curious if he does land on the below average, or if he's like me and just doesn't even realize he does it. But I felt like because of the way that I was raised and because of the expectations that I had on myself as a teenager, I couldn't help but lie. It would have been very hurtful to my parents, and I would have been in so much trouble. And they said, I remember them saying things, well, if you're honest, you'd get in less trouble because you're getting in trouble because you lied about it. And I don't know if that is true. I don't know if that would have always been true. I mean, there were definitely times when I got busted for lying, and then I got in trouble for the lying and in trouble for the behavior that I was doing that I had been lying about. But I think if they had just found about the behavior and I hadn't lied about it, I still probably would have been in trouble. That was more so the way my older brother did things. He did things, got in trouble, but he didn't lie about it. And I didn't just lie when I was in trouble. In fact, I was more likely to lie before I got in trouble to avoid trouble so that I could actually get. So is this lack of truth-telling a reflection of how I feel about authenticity? Am I a liar? I'm like, I guess so. I guess if the definition of a liar is somebody who lies, then I definitely do lie, and therefore I guess I am a liar. But I don't typically like to think that way. I don't typically like to describe people by their behaviors, because then I think it changes the value that we have on people, and I think people are of value regardless of their behaviors. So I probably would never use the word liar, even though I would say, I guess I do lie. Now, I have a kid. You know, I got 5, and I have a kid who often chooses to lie. And I think he's getting out of that behavior more now than when he was younger. But he would bold-face lie to the point that his face was so stoic that we honestly, my husband and I, we didn't know. Like, we could tell. Like, sometimes when kids are lying, it's so obvious. But him, we could never tell. And it was, as a parent, really kind of unusual to have that experience of, okay, is this kid lying or not lying? And what is the purpose of them lying? And what I've realized about that kid in particular is he hates conflict. If there is a situation where things are getting heated between him and myself, or him and my husband, he'll just do whatever he can to get out of the conflict situation, which is so different than how I am. I am one of those people that dives headfirst into conflict, has no problem having a fight, starting a fight, maintaining a fight. And he's not like that. So because he values being in peace, being in harmony, he will lie, small lies, to avoid that conflict. It's just his way of keeping the peace. Now, I was trying to find my list when I kept a list of the things that I had lied about that week, and I cannot find it anywhere where I wrote down all of these little lies I told. So I can't even tell you what the lies were that I told that week that I was keeping track. Teaser alert. I'm going to be doing an episode about forgetting things, misplacing things, and I'm going to be unpacking what it's like to be a disorganized person who's extremely organized, because I am definitely both. But that's one of the things that really grates on me. So that's coming. So if you haven't already, you should definitely subscribe so you don't miss that episode, because it's going to be good. Now, here's what I do remember about those 5 lies. They kind of fell into 2 categories. So one is the lie was an exaggeration, where I was increasing drama. Not by a lot. Like, I maybe exaggerated things and I said 7 times rather than 5 times. Like, we are talking minuscule exaggerations. And the other type of lie that I told is that I omitted things for 2 reasons, either to cast myself in a better light or to protect somebody's feelings that I love. Like, those are good reasons, right? To be lying. Maybe not the exaggeration piece, but that is one area where after I recorded those lies for the week that I have decided that I'm going to try to be more truthful when it comes to exaggeration and storytelling. Because here's the deal. I am a dramatic person and I like the drama and the flair of things. And consequently, sometimes when in that week when I was exaggerating the story, I was adding drama or more flair to the situation. But what I was realizing in reflection is I probably don't need to do that. I am dramatic enough without that small exaggeration. Like, it really doesn't change the situation or the story that much to say 7 times rather than 5 times. And I don't need to do that to have a wonderful story, an exciting story, an incredible event. I can just keep it to the 5 times. So I've been puzzling about that. And when we recount stories, like those situations that I was talking about with the exaggeration, we actually change and rewrite the memories that we have around certain events. There's some fascinating studies about how the brain works and how memory works. And I can link a book that I just read in the show notes. I believe it was called Remember, and it kind of dives into the way that our brain works. It's written by a doctor of neuroscience. And so that doctor has done some fascinating studies on the difference between episodic and flashbulb memories. So an episodic memory is when you remember a life event in your life. And a flashbulb is those memories like, where were you in 9/11? And the flashbulb, it's when something very significant or emotional happens and you remember a lot of details and you can recall them quickly at any point. So in those 2 different types of memories, episodic or flashbulb, when we remember them, when we recount them, when we bring those stories back to our memory, we are actually altering the memory so that our memory of the event changes. We might add in a detail, maybe because of an exaggeration, or something is going on and we slightly change the story as we tell it. And when we change the story as we tell it and it gets backlogged into our brain, it gets logged in differently than the memory was itself. And this happens not just to our episodic memories, but also to our flashbulb memories, which I find fascinating because when I think about a flashbulb memory, I feel like I have so much clarity. Like I can remember things like what people were wearing or exactly where I was standing. Like it feels like such a complete picture compared to an episodic, which seems to be gray around the edges for me. But in both types of these situations, our brain changes the memory. And in studies that they've done, according to this book, Remember, even when people, after a situation where they have a big memory, like a flashbulb memory, they will write notes, like directly after describing the situation or different elements of it. And then when they're asked to remember things, it'll be different than the notes that they had written. And when you bring up the note that they wrote in their own handwriting and you're comparing it with what they're saying happened to what they wrote happened moments after the situation, they are still more likely to say that the truth is how they remember it now, not how they recorded it at the event. Like that's how committed we are to the memories that we think we have that have actually been altered every time we remember it. Now, what is the connection to lying about the memories is the piece around when we retell those stories, we're not necessarily telling those stories in an honest way because it's actually changed over time. And that to me leads to the question that, well, for it to be lying, does there have to be intention there? Because I would never think that when I'm retelling a story from my memory that I'm lying about my memory, because I'm telling you as far as I remember it, even though evidence from these studies suggests that our memories are actually incorrect, or aspects of them are incorrect because we've rewritten them. But I'm not lying. So to me, that indicates that lying has intention. You're intending to do it. So then where I go from there is, okay, so if lying bad if my intention for lying is good? So for example, with my son, the one who lies to avoid conflict, does that make his lying behavior good because his intention is for greater peace and less conflict? Or myself, when I was talking about the two types of lies, so I did the exaggeration, and the other one I did was to omit things in order to protect other people's feelings. I'm not trying to hurt people because I really do care about the people in my life. So is my lying behavior about protecting them? And if that is my intention, is to protect them, then is my lying somehow good? Because my intention is to protect their feelings. So how do you measure that? Now, this probably sounds like I'm simply trying to justify my lying behavior. And I'm not necessarily trying to justify it. This is me just unpacking it. Because when I unpack things, I get to greater understanding. And through greater understanding, I'm more likely to change. Or if I'm not going to change, at least I know why I'm not going to change. So how do you measure this lying behavior and whether or not it's good? Because the way that I visualize this is almost like a scale. So for example, at what point does that scale tip? So you're lying to protect feelings, but then if you lie too much and somebody finds out, their feelings are way more hurt. Just like how I would get in trouble when I was a teenager, because I would get in trouble not just for the behavior, but for lying as well. So at some point, it's like you gotta kind of measure out that risk, right? If I had just been truthful after the lying, I would have gotten in less trouble. If you lie too much to somebody whose feelings you're trying to protect, it bites you in the butt because now their feelings are really hurt because they can't trust you. And the way that the lie is discovered often increases the hurt. If they have to discover it rather than you coming clean, way worse on the feeling side of things. So, am I justifying lying because of my intention? I think that I'm more so just really trying to get to the bottom of this behavior and recognizing, is this something that I want to change? It is not, it is not going to be a New Year's resolution to me to stop lying. But I am trying to be more intentional about it, to be more thoughtful about it, because it really came from this awareness that I didn't even know. I didn't even know that I was doing it. I didn't even think about it. But what would the benefit to me be of radical honesty, of radical authenticity? What happens to a relationship when you're always honest? And does omitting elements, is that lying? I'm not sure. I'm out on the fence on that one. If you don't tell somebody the whole truth, does it mean that you're lying? I think that that one is probably circumstantial. And are you seriously, you, the listener, judging me right now? I was imagining that. I was imagining, oh my gosh, am I really going to talk about this and be judged? Suspend all judgment until you do this yourself and find out if you are like me and just an average Joe when it comes to lying behavior. Do our little white lies hurt a relationship over time? Because the times when I have felt closest to my partner are when there's complete honesty, when there are no things that are between us. That's when I feel closest. So if I want to continue feeling close and safe, I probably need to be as honest as possible in that relationship. This morning, I asked my kids while they were heading out the door to school, I asked them, can you tell me the things that you lied? What was your last lie about? And I'm like, afterwards, I'm thinking to myself, maybe this isn't such a good idea, because I'm essentially saying to them, lying behavior is okay if I'm assuming that they do it. Or am I saying that it's okay and or not? Or am I just acknowledging that this is normal behavior and perhaps there should be no shame in normal behavior? I don't know what the message was that I was sending to them there. But the funny things that my kids have lied about. Okay, one kid said he lied to both my husband and I about washing the potatoes. Because all our kids help with all sorts of chores, including cooking. So apparently, and I don't even know when this lie was, but I had said to the kid, did you wash the potatoes before you cooked them? And he clearly lied to all of us. And so we were laughing about, well, I guess we ate dirty potatoes. Now, because they were heading out the door to school, I didn't get to ask them, like, how come you were lying about that? And one thing I know about kids, though, is they lie to get out of work, and they lie to avoid getting into trouble, and they lie to avoid conflict. Now, any of those could apply to that lie. Now, another kid had lied about stealing something from his sibling. And when we pressed this kid, because we remember this lie, it had happened a few weeks ago. And when my husband and I were pressing this kid about this situation, because it didn't quite seem right, his response to us was, he started shouting. He threw his hands in the air and started shouting, I confess, I lied. And he couldn't handle the pressure of being questioned. But when I asked him today, because he brought up that was the last time he lied, and I asked him, well, how come you were lying about it? And he said, I just wanted to be like my brother. I wanted to be like my brother. Not that he was wanting to copy lying behavior, but he wanted to be cool like his brother, so he was lying about this situation so that he was more like his brother. I think it's a really interesting conversation to have with my kids, because all of the conversations that I've had with my kids prior to this about lying behavior have all been around, don't lie to me. It breaks down trust between us when you lie. We've never actually explored lying when somebody's not in the hot seat, because nobody was in the hot seat today when we were talking about lying behavior. And it really created a sense of freedom in the conversation where everybody could talk about it and laugh about it. My husband, he was also, because he was driving the kids today, also shared the last lie that he did. And it had to do with something that we all thought was funny. So because we were joking about, there's this tradition around putting a pickle on a Christmas tree. And my kids are always hiding the pickle because they want the pickle on the Christmas tree. And I'm not into it. It's been like a thing they've been wanting to do the last few years. And I just think the pickle is ugly and it kind of just annoys me. So the lie that my husband had said, and it was kind of a joke, but it had to do with, he said he wasn't going to put the pickle on the tree and did put the pickle on the tree. Essentially, it was the lie. But it brought a lot of humor to the conversation and a lot of openness. And I think that's one of the things that's really feels inherently different with my family and my kids, and what I experienced growing up is I didn't feel like there was a lot of space for conversations that didn't necessarily meet the norm. We didn't talk about things in the same way. And I don't blame my parents for anything like that, because really do value the way that they raised me and the relationship that I have with them, both then and now. I love my parents and my family, and we're quite close. I do, however, really appreciate being able to have those kind of conversations in our household with my kids, because that is something that my husband and I are doing different with these kids than what I experienced. And I'm looking forward to seeing if this conversation around lying behavior impacts or changes the way that they think about lying, and whether or not they will be less likely to lie. Now, in all of the conversations that we've been having today about lying, I'm not talking about compulsive or perpetual lying or pathological lying. I've had people in my life who lie so much that they don't even know they're not lying. It's like that part of their brain thinks that it's the truth because they've told lies so much that it's rewriting their memories where the lies are actually true. Just like we talked about earlier, that the way your brain works, you rewrite your memories. You can rewrite your memories with lies and believe the lies and not even recognize that it isn't a lie, because your brain doesn't recognize when you've rewritten a memory, even when you're not intentionally lying. And another funny thing about the brain is the brain itself has a difficult time discerning whether the visualization is the reality or if just actually doing it is the reality. The way it operates in your brain when you visualize things, it's as though you've actually done it. That's one of the reasons why visualization, I mean, it's not exactly like that. There's obviously differences because your body is moving when you actually do something compared to when you visualize something. But there is research that suggests that visualization reads the same way as actually doing something, which is why visualization is so effective when you're trying to create new ways of doing things. Compulsive and pathological or perpetual lying is extremely difficult, and it leaks into every aspect of your relationship because there's no way of ever knowing what the truth is. And we can start out lying for the same reasons that we talked about for my own lying behavior, right? Well, maybe, adding a little bit of drama or exaggerating the truth, which can be connected to self-esteem issues, wanting to be of value. So making yourself more valuable or more attractive. And it can be to avoid conflict and avoid trouble because you don't want to lose these relationships, because this is where your safety is. So people can get into compulsive or perpetual lying because they're trying to protect their relationship and maintain their relationship because that is their safety net. Now, according to Google, it says that these types of, like the compulsive, the perpetual types of lying or the pathological lying is rooted in a mental health issue or concern. And in order to deal with the lying, you kind of have to deal with the mental health issue. So the lying, therefore, is a symptom of something else that is bigger. And if you can address the something that is bigger, then maybe the lying behavior just goes away. Which means that in order to really get to that, that's time to maybe reach out to a therapist in your home community. If you feel like, oh, I'm not the average, I'm not just lying 1 to 2 times a day, I'm actually lying all the time and can't even discern when I've lied or when I haven't lied, and that it's so frequent, that might be time where you reach out to someone in your home community and get help, because that type of behavior is absolutely destructive to relationships. When I was talking about that person in my life that lied like that, they're still in my life, but we're not close. And every time that I see that person, I just know that I can't believe a word that comes out of their mouth. And I still love that person and I still have a relationship. I just take everything with a grain of salt. I'm not going to take anything they say to the bank. I can't cash in on any of it. Because there's other things that are going on there, and until that is taken care of, it's really difficult to be in an open, honest relationship with that person. So if that sounds like you, if you are somebody who lies more than the average, more than the white lie, and the reason for lying is about maintaining relationships, but it's actually, the lying is actually starting to break down your relationship, please get help. Please find someone in your community to talk to. There's so many talented therapists that can help people get to the bottom of these things so that you can have that closeness in your relationships, and also just have freedom in your life from all of those feelings that are leading toward lying behavior. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for tuning in. I've decided to have no shame whatsoever about my lying behavior. And I hope that this episode was encouraging for you today. I hope it causes you to think about your behaviors and be intentional about it. This episode isn't intended to be professional help. And if you are needing professional help, please reach out and get it so that you can be the best person, the best version of yourself. I'm Amy McInnes. And this is The Art of Plenty.